Vous avez mal?
Chronic pain.
Douleur intense.
Pain.
Douleur.
La douleur chronique.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Don Daniel. I am the co-president of the Quebec Network of Junior Pain Investigators, so the QNJPI. And here today, I am with Haoyi and Marina, who are both speakers at PAINtalks 2020 to talk about their general experience of the PAINtalks itself. So how are you guys doing, Haoyi and Marina?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you for having me too.
Perfect. So we're going to go over a couple of just general questions for today. So how did you find your experience being part of PAINtalks itself? So let's start with you, Marina.
I really enjoyed the experience. Well, actually, being part of the PAINtalks was something different for me because I was used to different kinds of presentations, different kinds of conferences. But when I first saw the edition of 2019, I really liked the format and the presentations. So I said, maybe I'll apply next year. Maybe it will be nice to present something that way too.
And how about yourself, Haoyi?
Yeah, I found my experience presenting at PAINtalks really great. I really appreciated how smooth the whole process was. Thanking the PAINtalks committee, they made me aware of the entire process and were really receptive to my questions.
Great. So what exactly pushed both of you to apply for PAINtalks? Because I know on both of your ends, the challenge comes that you guys are both a basic scientist and a scientist who works with animals. So it's something completely out of the comfort zone when you're actually explaining this to patients and the general population itself. So what pushed you to apply? Let's start with you, Haoyi.
So one of the reasons I applied was really because, I was used to presenting at scientific conferences to, researchers who have been in this field for quite a while and know the technical jargon and understand really the research that I was presenting. So I found that I was lacking the skills to present to, my friends and family and to my community. So this experience was I was able to make my research more accessible to the general audience.
That sounds amazing. How about you, Marina?
So let me tell you what pushed me to apply for the PAINtalks, what really incentivized me was one of the speakers from 2019. We talked after his presentation, Mathieu Vincenot, and I really liked the way that he presented. And we were talking about my research tool that I work with facial expression in cats. And he said, wow, that's a really interesting subject. I think you should go for next year and apply. That will be a great kind of event to present your research in that way, because it's an easier way to present your research and your results. So he pushed me to apply, and I really thank him because I really enjoyed the experience in the end.
That's amazing how a speaker actually was the one to give you the incentive to apply to present at PAINtalks. So you guys both mentioned a couple of challenges. So what were these challenges that you encountered along the way for your presentation in PAINtalks, and how did you overcome them? So let's start with you, Marina.
I would say that first, when I decided to participate in the PAINtalks, I had some time reserved for it and everything, but then during the end of my PhD, some things changed and I decided that I would finish before. So I had to write my thesis and prepare for the presentation. So for me, I think the most important challenge was the time management. So I had to work a little bit later some days, but in the end, I really enjoyed the experience, and that really helped me because I used some of the tricks that I learned and even parts of my presentation from the PAINtalks during my PhD defense.
That sounds amazing. And how about you, Haoyi?
I think one of the challenges that I encountered along the way when presenting for PAINtalks was struggling to engage an audience through the screen. So when it was pre-recorded, I didn't really have people watching me. It was really me talking to a camera. And it was kind of hard to really talk to someone because it wasn't face-to-face. And I was able to overcome this because throughout the speaker training, the trainer he had gave us different tips so we can use our hand movements, our eye contact towards the camera to really engage the audience.
That's great. And speaking of the person you guys worked with to help with your presentation, so that's Denis François Gravel. How did you find your experience with working with him for actually training for public speaking? So let's start with you, Haoyi, since you mentioned him as well.
Yeah, I thought it was a great resource. I didn't know really what to expect because I had never attended a public speaking training session before, but I did learn a lot of useful tips that I could remember when I was presenting and I could recall and really apply the knowledge learned in these sessions.
That sounds great. And I'm pretty sure he gives like a lot of tips as well as such as you mentioned, so making eye contact with the camera or using your hand gestures. How about you, Marina?
I found that working with Denis François was really enjoyable. He's a very nice person, and he gave a lot of tips that were really important for public speaking, for presenting. And the most memorable thing for me, it was the structure of the talk before you even start. Don't start even for the title, leave the title for the end. Like what he told us to start at the end with your conclusions, with your main results. And for me, that was totally an upside down because I was used to present in conferences where you start with the introduction, then methods, then you get to the results and conclusions. That way, I found that it really makes the presentations more interesting to the audience. So I found amazing the way that we worked with him and all the tips that he gave us for presenting even later in other situations.
That sounds great. And I feel like the biggest like take back from working with Denis François is just really changing the mindset of how you're presenting to the public. So as scientists, for all three of us, we're very used to giving an introduction, methods, results, and then a discussion or a conclusion at the end. But here with Denis François, you basically turn it all upside down, where you start with your conclusion or your main result, and you're basically just telling a story. And I think that was the most interesting part. Being a speaker myself back in 2019 was having that process of just changing your whole mindset when creating your presentation. So you guys, both of you guys were part of PAINtalks 2020, and given the restrictions in place due to COVID-19, both of you guys had to do your presentation without an audience, and it was pre-recorded. And how did you find that PAINtalks experience without an audience itself? How did you find the process of filming your talks in advance of the event itself? Let's start with you, Haoyi.
It was very different because, again, I have never filmed before, and the PAINtalks presentation, it was really a whole production. So we had cameras, we had the set and the crew. We had, it was a very big production going on. And so it was kind of intimidating at first, but I think the PAINtalks committee did a really good job easing the transition, make sure it was smooth from in-person to online delivery.
Great.
How about you, Marina?
Well, I found the experience of pre-recording the talks, it was different, definitely was different. For me, it lacks the feedback from the public, but at the same time, there was a huge production, like the lights, the mics, and the set, everything was very well thought. And one of the tips that I even used from the training was to pretend there is an audience there. Present as if you were in front of the audience, as if you were at the theater. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that we filmed in the same theater that the 2019 edition happened. So it gave you the same feeling that you were actually there. So at least it overcome a little bit of the challenge of having just you and a camera in front of you.
For sure, for sure. Okay, so if you guys were to, let's say, redo PAINtalks 2020 and you had the opportunity to have it in front of an audience, would you do it again, and why? Let's start with you, Marina.
I would definitely do it again if I had the chance to present to a live audience. I think it would change a little bit, especially the interaction, but still, I really enjoyed the experience. So if I had the opportunity to repeat it, I would.
Amazing. And how about you, Haoyi?
I would definitely apply for PAINtalks again if it was in person, because when I had applied originally, I was kind of hoping that it would be in person, but it was moved online due to the pandemic restrictions. And I think it would be really receptive if you had an audience, listening to a live audience listening to your talk, and you can see the faces of the audience if they were confused or if they understood what was being presented to them.
Yeah, and I think what was a little bit missing in terms of the pandemic of this year with the restrictions, and of course we did live stream it, and there were comments that were put on the YouTube channel, but of course it would have been the experience would have been different and, let's say, much more interactive if we had everything in person, and then after that you guys got to meet the audience members who were able to ask you guys questions, and hopefully this coming PAINtalks 2021, hopefully if it is in person, and if you do end up coming to the live event and people do recognize you from the past PAINtalks 2020, they can always ask questions to you as well. So despite having it hybrid, what did you gain from being part of PAINtalks? Did you learn new skills? Did you get more visibility for your work or for your team's work? I want to hear what were the opportunities or the advantages that you guys got out of the PAINtalks event after it was done itself. Let's start with you, Haoyi.
I think one of the skills I was able to gain from being a part of PAINtalks was really making my science more accessible. This is my research. No one else knows it better than me, so it's my responsibility to make sure I can effectively communicate this with not only the scientific researchers, but the community, like the chronic pain patients who are really impacted by this research.
That's for sure. It's really true. How about you, Marina?
What I really liked from this experience that I could apply further was some of the tips, even for the presentation itself, the PowerPoint, the slides, I could use in my PhD defense, and definitely I can use it later for other presentations. Even in scientific conferences, we can change a little bit, tweak a little bit the presentation and make it more interesting to the audience. I think that's something that I will always carry with me. And another thing, that I did a job interview a couple of months ago, and they asked me, are you okay speaking in public? Did you have this experience before? And I said, yes, I had this experience and I really like it, not only in scientific conferences, but also in a different kind of event. And that's something that I really enjoyed. So I wouldn't be surprised if I had the opportunity or if I had to do that in this other job that I applied.
That sounds amazing. And I think for both of you that you guys mentioned is really the new skill that you guys have learned in making your research accessible. And the fact that you can apply this to basically anything and everything, So whether it's in a new job opportunity where they're asking you to look at public speaking, or if you just wanted to explain your research to your parents or your friends who don't have any scientific background at all. And I think that's the biggest take-home message from being part of PAINtalks or being part as a speaker of PAINtalks itself. I maybe have like a couple of directed questions for each of you. So you were in your bachelor's when you applied and were presenting for PAINtalks. How did you find that experience, being very up against, let's say, graduate students, researchers, and being on the same level and the same platform where you get to explain your research itself? And maybe a follow-up question would be, would you recommend any other bachelor student to have the same experience as you?
I think being less experienced in the research field when I applied to PAINtalks was a bit intimidating, I have to admit, because I didn't know how the scientific community was going to be, like how receptive they were going to be about my talk. But my professor, Dr. Reza Sharif Naini, he really encouraged me to just use this as an opportunity to practice. No one expected you to be perfect. And I would encourage other bachelor students to apply, because you have to start somewhere, and I think this is a great opportunity to really apply the public speaking skills that you have to the scientific, apply the public speaking skills that you develop to other scientific components as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think the take home message that you bring up is that, as a bachelor student, yes, it might be intimidating to apply for this big platform where you're doing public speaking, but if there's an opportunity to learn a new skill, to, challenge yourself, or, step out of your comfort zone, being like someone who has less experience, I think it's a big advantage that will come in the future. And honestly, I think everyone is probably looking forward to future public speaking opportunities that you're going to be part of, Haoyi, in the future in terms of your research. And for you, Marina, so you were in your PhD and you were actually in your final year of your PhD and you were writing your thesis, and therefore you had a lot of experience, presenting at conferences, maybe other knowledge translation opportunities where you had to present in a more lay format, let's say those 3-minute, 3-minute presentations. How was your experience, let's say, different for Haoyi, where you kind of had to change your mindset itself?
Yes. Well, let's say, I had a little bit of experience, but in different kinds of presentation, not in the format that PAINtalks is presented. That's a little bit different, and I found really interesting still. But I would say that I came in with a very open-minded. I wanted to learn new things. I did present before in other formats, such as the 3-minute thesis or in other conferences, but most of them were directed to veterinarians. As a veterinarian myself, I was not used to present my work or my research to lay people or to people who were really not very aware of what kind of research we do with animals, but let me say, to the benefit of the animals itself. So sometimes the applicability of this kind of research is a little bit limited, but we can expand that and make people aware that animals feel pain and that we can recognize that, and then we can improve their quality of life too.
And I think that's the biggest thing with both of your presentations, Haoyi and Marina, is that both of you guys are completely out of clinical research. So you guys are doing, let's say, animal testing, using cells, using specific tissues as well in terms of your experiments. And I think having both of your presentations really highlights what you guys do in terms of a foundation for clinical research itself. So for example, you talked a lot about cells and neurons, and it's very basic science that not a lot of people have access to, and they just look at the clinical research itself. And I think highlighting that and making that accessible really highlights the importance of this basic research. And then for you, Marina, with your animal research, and people don't see that animals feel pain very much as well as humans, and actually can be very much applied to humans as well. So for example, we have the face pain scales for humans. We now, for your PhD thesis and for your presentation itself, you talked about the felines pain scale, correct? Exactly. And it just highlights how there is very much, let's say, a transition that you can really see between both the tissues, the animal research, and clinical research as well. And I feel that was what I really liked most about both of your presentation, is seeing that other side of research itself in the basic and animal research. So what did you find the most memorable about the whole experience? Or which part of the PAINtalks experience did you find the most enjoyable itself? Let's start with you, Marina.
The part of the PAINtalks that I found the most enjoyable was actually watching the event. When I sit down in front of the YouTube, it was live, but well, it was not in person, but at least it was live. I was following the comments. I was trying to interact also with the people, at least in the comment section, but I really enjoyed the delivery after all the preparation was done, but the delivery of the final product.
That's amazing. Did you have any comments regarding the live event itself?
Well, actually, some people made a couple of questions. I remember one of them, if the kind of research that I presented could be applied also for dogs, not only for cats. I remember that I answered this couple of questions, but it still is a very quick turnover. You must move on quickly. There was not like an actual period of questions in front of the people, but still I could answer some of them, and I could interact a little bit with the crowd.
Great. And let's say, how about you, Haoyi? What did you find the most memorable about your whole experience?
The most memorable part of my whole experience was definitely, like Marina said, seeing everything come together. The hard work that you had put in for months on end, really presented on the stage. It was really nice to see, and also hearing like about everyone else's research as well, and seeing how, like, you know, the overarching concept of making pain more accessible to the public was being presented.
Great. And I think that's really the biggest part, is seeing the end result at the very end, seeing your video on YouTube as well, seeing how it all comes together, and how the accomplishment of all the hard work that you guys have done, I think, is really what's let's say the most memorable and the most, let's say, I wouldn't say heartwarming, but the most recognizable, I'd say, in terms of the work that you guys have both done for PAINtalks. Okay, so we're going quite well in terms of the interview, so I'm gonna go with the last question actually. So what would be, sorry?
May I just compliment my answer with one thing that just came to mind that I would
Okay,
like to
yeah,
say.
go ahead.
Another thing that was really memorable is that since the event was broadcasted live on YouTube, people anywhere in the world could watch it. And I remember that my mother back in Brazil could watch it too. And if it was live here in Quebec, she couldn't be there. So I found that really nice that the family could also join and people all around the world could see the event.
That's very true. We actually had a lot of people from around the globe that were tuning in into our event itself, whether it was live on the time that we were presenting it, or let's say a little bit time after due to the time differences itself. But having that worldwide recognition or worldwide access, I think, was a big plus for PAINtalks 2020 with COVID-19, that people were still able to tune in despite the whole staying at home. So for the last question, what would be your message to someone who's still unsure of applying to be a speaker for PAINtalks this year? Let's start with you, Marina.
I would say for someone who's still not very sure if it should apply or not, I say go ahead, just apply. It's definitely it's gonna be a very memorable experience, and I'm sure you're gonna enjoy. Still, of course, if you have a lot of things to do, a lot of work, you still can manage. There were always many doodles for the best time for everyone to fit the training and everything, and even the deliverables and things that you needed to deliver. You had a pretty good deadline. It was pretty feasible. So I would say go ahead and apply it.
Amazing. And how about you, Haoyi?
Yeah, for someone who is unsure about applying, if they should apply to PAINtalks, I say, again, do it. It was a great opportunity. You really got to learn a lot of like public speaking techniques and skills that really no other place would be able to provide you with. If you're a little shy, or if you feel like you're unprepared, if you don't think your science is like good enough, it doesn't matter. PAINtalks committee will prepare you well in advance and give you lots of resources that you can use to really feel confident in your research.
Those are both very great answers. And I think the thing is, don't hesitate. There's nothing to lose with applying. Like, the worst thing that you can get is no. And with that, it's just more, okay, maybe I should just rethink the way I did my application and then change it up again for next year, because there's nothing to lose at this point. And that's really the biggest take-home message in terms of people who are planning on applying for PAINtalks 2021. Okay, so thank you so much for the interview, Marina and Haoyi. You guys did an amazing job, both of you, in terms of your presentations in PAINtalks 2020. I think, speaking for myself and maybe speaking for everyone, I think everyone's really looking forward to what the outcomes or will come out of both of your research in the future. So this is for everyone. The PAINtalks 2021 is coming up. It's coming on November 5. So everyone save the date for November 5th for the 6th edition of PAINtalks 2021. And then for all those who are thinking of applying, the application will begin on the early May for all QNJPI speakers. So don't waste your time. Start thinking of your application now, and we're looking forward to anyone who will be applying for this year. So thank you so much, Marina and Haoyi, again for today, for talking about your experience in PAINtalks 2020.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.